7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Ken, if you could do roll call.
Sure. Blackburn?
Present.
Hageman?
Here.
Hedge?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Craybill? Mishigian?
Here.
It's a quorum with 6.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion approves. Nope, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. We are going to move to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 23rd, 2023.
I would say move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. We need to approve the meeting minutes from the special meeting of January 30th, 2023. Do I hear a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Next is public comments not on the published agenda. Anybody? Seeing none, we're going to move to our discussion topics. Our first topic is the monthly report from Chief Roberts.
Up here. Challenge getting in here. Oh, cool. Can I use this? Yeah. Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. You have our written submission. I don't have a lot to add. A couple of things that I'll let Chief Tony address all the recent storm damage and other things that we've been handling all this week, including this evening. But I do want to let you know that I did pass on our budget for the next year information to your new budget treasurer, and I'm sure we spoke today on the phone, so if he has any questions, we'll be glad to talk it over when he gets there, when he gets to putting it all together. The one other thing I did want to mention in addition to what's on our written report is that we did have earlier this month a significant event on Bristol Lane involving a home invasion, and I know there's been a lot of talk, in the neighborhood and things about what's going on there. And I just want to assure everybody that it is not an act of crime that you need to worry about. It was a targeted break-in on a home that two people that knew each other kind of thing, and the individual is in custody, and we don't have to worry about that person anymore. So if you heard something from your constituents about a lot of police activity on the house on Bristol Lane and that there was a break-in, it's all true, but it was a targeted thing between two individuals that knew each other. It was not a random crime of violence or anything that was occurring in Bingham Farms. So I just wanted to clear that up. That's really all I can say about it at this time because it's pending in court, but nobody has anything to worry about. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And that's really all I have, unless you all have some questions for me about our written report. Yes, sir?
I was looking at our budget information today and noticed that this is the year that we buy the police car. And it looks like it's already been purchased because we didn't budget quite enough. It's usually your problem, sorry, Ron, but presumably the new car is here and in place. And then in our income statement, our income portion, it has a capital sale of capital assets, which is the old police car.
Correct, which was just posted last week, I want to say.
Okay,
so they'll take bids on that, and then whatever money that comes out of that, the Village of Franklin reimburses you.
Okay, so it was just posted, it hasn't been completed yet then?
It has not. No. In fact, I want to say they have a couple more weeks to even submit on their bids for that. So normally we get a lot of used car dealerships that bid on those types of things, and there's a couple in particular that one out of Chicago that seems to win a lot of the bids. They bid the highest on it. So we'll let you know as soon as we get an amount. But they're all sealed bids until a particular date.
Okay, so maybe next month then we might know.
Oh, yes, by next month you'll know for
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. And the reason why that was off was we do budget for that, and we try as best as we can to figure out how much it is, but the car prices went way up beyond what we thought they were going to be. And so that's all I have. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll get out of here.
I was going to take the computer. You can have the asphalt.
That's just leased.
The asphalt?
The computer.
Oh, you can write this off.
Chief Everbaugh.
Good evening, all. You also have our written report. I wanted to cover a couple of things. First off, an extra thank you for Trustee Hedge, who has been up. I hope you still are happy that you have access to our run volume. Trustee Hedge, who showed up at our meeting for the Fire Commission and has since gained access as our Fire Department liaison to our runs, and 40 of them in the last week-ish. So we just had 4 runs in the last hour. So I also want to commend the Village of Bingham Farms on their tree trimming activities, because the vast majority of our calls from the ice storm were on the other side of Telegraph. Bingham Farms had, I think, 2. So we're very appreciative of that. Last week we did endure an ice storm that knocked out most of Franklin, among other cities across the state for the entire width of the state. At one point, the Department of Energy relayed that 15% of the customers of electrical service in the state were out of power. So this was most definitely not a local event. This went across, and DTE and contract line crews are still in the area, with approximately 70,000 customers out of service. According to the news, an increase of 10,000 today alone. And we did have, we responded to 1 downwire call as a result of today's activity. So other than that, I also wanted to bring up an event that took place late last week. It involved the Rusty Bucket. I had made contact with a village manager. In addition to the city of Southfield, the Rusty Bucket had a small fire in their kitchen. They were able to extinguish the fire, and on re-inspection by the health department, it was noted that a fire inspection was needed. So in my 24 years here, never faced this, so this was new for me. But I worked with the Southfield Fire Marshal, Southfield Fire Department Fire Marshal, who came over, provided a little bit of education, and assisted with the inspection. So I wanted to thank Ken personally for the assistance in working with us on that activity, as well as the City of Southfield and their fire marshal for coming out when this was responsibility for our fire department. With regard to inspections, very last thing, I wanted to let you know that we are working on creating we'll call it a survey form that we'll use for our annual walkthroughs of businesses. As part of this, my intent, is going to be to create a 3-part form. 1 part will be maintained by the fire department, 1 part will be provided to the village for visibility, and the 3rd will be provided to that commercial property. So we're still working on that. It has not been finalized yet. Once it is, we will start putting it into play. Pending your questions, though, that'll conclude my report.
Chief,
Yes.
I noticed that the number of EMS runs was at an all-time high for this 18-month period.
Yes.
Is there an explanation, or just in general across the board?
It's everything. We're seeing people coming back from the days of COVID. So people are more willing to call 911. We're also seeing people less willing to go to their own physicians. In some cases, we have a couple of addresses one in Franklin, namely one in Bingham Farms, that are calling us quite often. But it's just a mix. But with the aging population of our communities, we're seeing this more and more. The citizen assist calls are still, I'm not saying that they're all at all-time high, but they're still high enough to be of concern, especially in light of our increased run volume. So, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. I just want to introduce you as well to our new treasurer, Bill Patton.
Yes, thank you.
I know he spoke to the police chief today, but he's joined our team, and
Excellent.
so now you have a face with a name.
Perfect. We've emailed back and forth last week as well, so
Good.
hopefully we'll get some time.
However, you were busy with generators and all kinds of other things.
Just another day in
Another
paradise.
day.
We, speaking of one last thing, if I may, we did have one or two runs related to generator use. These were whole house generators, and I would ask for those watching as well as anyone in attendance in the audience, if you have a whole house generator, learn which way your generator exhausts. Whole house generators typically do not go, the exhaust doesn't go straight up. It goes out to the side and it goes in force. We've had, this generator was installed, permitted, everything, but the generator itself exhausted right towards the house. And I believe either the furnace intake, the air intake to the house, as well as the soffit vents caused that exhausted gas, the carbon monoxide, to get directly into the home. So, as we've always had in the fire department, the desire to be invited into someone's home before an event to do a walkthrough, separate set of eyes. This is one more reason why it may benefit to have us come over and visit your home in Bingham Farms. We don't go outside of the village, but we will do this at no cost. There is no paperwork at the end of the visit. This is just a discussion with recommendations. So, thank you. Sorry for
Very
the
generous.
addition.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night. Next is Ken's administrator report.
Yeah, thank you. I have nothing to add, but I would like to remind everybody that yard waste collection does not really begin until April 6th. Weather gets warmer, people start cleaning up, and sometimes they put bags out ahead of time. Car trucking will not collect those bags until April 6th. So for those of you watching at home and here today, please make note and tell your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Brad Shepler and his team are here for our roads presentation.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh, wait one second. We got copies of the presentation in case you can't see it up there or you want to make notes
Thank
or
you.
something yourself. So thank you, Council President Blackburn.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you for having us here again. We were here this summer to talk roads, but we have a lot of new faces here, so it was time to come again and talk about how to plan to improve your roadway network. Again, my name is Brad Shepler. I'm with Hubble, Roth & Clark. I'm here with Bill West, who's our geotechnical and roads expert, and I also have Andrew Johnstone here from our office, who will be doing a lot of the day-to-day roadway improvement work that you may want to do. We'll go through a quick agenda here. We put together a bunch of cost estimates back in April. After the cost estimates, we had recommended that the village complete a pavement coring program to figure out what exactly they have in their roads so we can put together better estimates in the future. So let you know that we haven't really updated these estimates since April with this information, so what you'll see is high-level, gold-plated type of estimates, so please don't have a sticker shock when you see them. And then we'll go through some of the other things that we've been doing since April to come to a little better consensus on what we think we can do. So again, so start with the cost estimates. So village management understood that improvements to the current roadway network could not be completed with just the current levels of state funding. So we'll go through exactly how much money you get from the state each year in a little bit, but village management understood that. So HRC was requested by the village to assemble some cost estimates to improve these just village-owned roads, not the private roads. And again, I already went through how the costs were created in April. These are all the roads that we did cost estimates for. We put together 2 tiers of cost estimates. One was a full road reconstruction, which again was like the gold plated. If we tore everything out, put everything back how current industry standard roads are built now, like your highways and things like that. Not as thick, but in terms of drainage and things like that. And then we just did a major surface rehabilitation, which is kind of the way that you may have seen Bingham Road and Bristol Lane be reconstructed in the mid-2000s, where they take off all the asphalt, they do some grading around just to kind of shape it, and then they put all new asphalt back. So that's how those roads were built. Again, 2004, 2006-ish. 2023 now, you can see what shape they're in now. They're kind of ready for, so you get about 10 to 15 years out of this major surface rehabilitation, which you can see for your own eyes. So real quick, I'll just run through these briefly. Again, the full road reconstruction is the full removal and replacement of the existing road surface, any sub-base that's there, full removal of existing driveway approaches, put in proper drainage. Here's a little view of what that's what it's kind of existing, and this would be the full roadway reconstruction. New drainage all over the place, subgrade undercutting, pretty much a complete overhaul of the roads. After looking at the pavement cores that we got, we don't think this is going to be necessary. We think this is way above and beyond shape. You guys have actually good soils and good base already in most of your roads. So
I'll talk about that.
Bill will talk about that in a little bit, but this was done back in April. We didn't know all this information yet, so that's all. So then we also have a major surface rehabilitation, which again goes a little bit step less. We pretty much take off all the top pavement. We redo the sub base a little bit, do some base repairs, do a little bit of drainage work if needed. The village is actually doing a drainage network analysis based on a grant that we got from Oakland County. So we'll be able to tell which roads need drainage, which ones don't, where drainage goes in the future, which will help the roads, obviously. But obviously, these are the assumptions that we ran through. And the next slide, I'll kind of get to the total estimated cost. But we did put in a lot of as-needed type items, because you never know what you're going to find as soon as you uncover something. So we wanted to make sure that we're not giving you a cost that's too low when we come in and it's higher. We want to make sure there's enough coverage, and once we do more analysis, we can pare that down a little bit. So we get to the information that you want to see. So this is the total estimated cost range, again, for the high-level gold-plated to 10 to 15 year type of rehab. Again, the 17 million, we think that's a little above where we need to go. The 12 million is probably on the high end of where you would be. We think we can get it done much less than that with some of the analysis that we've done, some of the pavement cores that we've put together, and some of the different surface rehabilitation options that are out there now that can prevent cracking. And Bill, again, is the expert. He'll kind of go through those. But that's just a quick, I guess, high level on what we put together in terms of costs, so you can kind of wrap your head around what we're talking about in terms of investment into your roads. And we'll start talking a little bit later into what your expectations are, how much your residents are willing to spend for roads, what you want the roads to look like in the future. But we'll get into some of the things that we've done since April, and we'll start with PASER ratings. So we were able to get a grant from SEMCOG to do what's called a PASER rating, and Bill can tell you what that acronym is. I don't really know off the top of my head, but it's a visual rating of the roads, and we drove all the roads. Again, it's completely paid for by SEMCOG, so the village does not pay a dime for doing this, and it gives a rating for the roads. But I'll let Bill talk a little bit more about that, and then I'll come back in a little bit.
PASER stands for Pavement Surface Evaluation and Rating System. It's a visual rating system of the surface of the pavement. That's it. There's no evaluate the drainage. There's no evaluate the soils. There's nothing other than a team of people drives over the roadway, feels the ride quality, notes the distress, and makes a rating of the pavement greatness. And And there's a description that says everything I just said. It's a 10-point scale. That's a derivative of a system called Paver that was developed by the Corps of Engineers 100 years ago. That's a 100-point scale. And you can see that the 10-point scale in PACER has 3 different general zones of fair, poor, and good. Well, the Paver system has 7 different colors, ranging from completely horrible to super awesome. But this is a lot more user-friendly for local communities like Bingham Farms. And most communities around this area all use the PACER system. The most recent round of PACER ratings were pretty consistent. The routes in the city were predominantly in the high side of poor, which got us, we're not at the end of the service life, but we're reaching the end of the service life. And looking back at when the last road rehab happened here in the village, which was 15 to 20 years ago, and we're tracking appropriately. There's a couple anomalies to that. One is Brooks Lane, and we've got Coach Lane and Old Stage, which didn't show up in the poor, and we'll talk about what's different about this. Fred's stepping on my presentation over and over again.
Excuse me, can I ask one question?
Fire away.
Back on your last slide, maybe I'm just missing something, but it looks on your slide, you had Bingham Lane as fair, and in my packet it listed as poor. Am I looking at the wrong thing here?
No,
You are correct.
So what happened was we got the slide before that shows all the colors. The fair was, if you want to go back one more slide. One more. So here it says red is fair. So I just wanted to make a match, and I think we got the wrong. I think the packet printed out a older slide is all. So 4 is technically fair. It's on the upper end of 4. That's why it's a little different. We just had a little miscommunication. I changed some stuff. Sorry.
They're
I just wanted to match.
Yeah, keep him on his toes,
Number
yes.
matches.
They're
Number
predominantly
matches.
in the 3-4 stage. The concrete routes, Coach Light and Old Stage, they scored a little better, and Brooks Lane scored a little better. We'll talk about how that came to be. The next step in the data collection was not just the visual look at the road and say it looks good, but it's collect a sample of the pavement, collect samples of the subsoils, run some tests on the subsoils to identify just how good they are for supporting the roadway. I'm going to say this right. The investigation had a few phases. The first phase was to identify the length of the routes within the village and to try to collect a core sample about every 1,000 feet or every 1,000 linear feet of roadway. And then, based on the results of the first wave of the investigation, additional sample locations were selected just to get better coverage. And I was hunting around. There were spots that had atypically bad or atypically high levels of pavement distress, and I wanted to go find out why that was happening. And I was hunting around looking for bad, like excessively bad dirt, and I couldn't find it. When you're looking at the map, you'll see there's some locations, like on that crazy map that I'm putting up on the screen. There's spots that look like they're a hell of a lot closer together than 1 every 5 or 1 every 1,000 feet. It's because I was hunting around looking for that spot. If you look at the printouts in the packet, I have this included as an 11 by 17 because I can't tell what anything says. And I've stared at all those crazy colors for quite a while putting that together.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry. If you could turn your microphone off, just because we're flipping so many papers, and I know that's really hard for people at home to hear. And then if you want to ask a question, then go ahead and turn it back on, but just because we want to make sure that people will review this at home. Thank you.
Sure. And I wouldn't spend a minute trying to wrap your head around what all those different color and brick patterns mean unless you're trying to design a new backsplash for your kitchen. What you should be concerned with are the numbers next to those crazy images. The top one reflects the pavement thickness in inches. More is better. And that's what we want out here. What we have within the village, nominally 4 or 5 inches of asphalt in most locations. The next number, underneath that in pink, that is the road base thickness in inches. Again, more is better. I think most of the routes out here are formerly gravel surface roads, and then over years and years of getting treatment and maintenance and regrading and recompaction, you've got a good thick base section out here. If you look at most of these numbers, we've got 16 and 24, 14, 13. Lots of your competing neighboring communities would love to have a foot of aggregate base course underneath their asphalt roads everywhere. And the third and most important number, which is the green one beneath it, it doesn't matter what that result means, more is better. If that number is 10 or above, all options are on the table. You've got great soils to build your roads on. You have many things, you have many choices. Basically, everything is on the table for you. When you have numbers really low, that means the soils are obviously bad for, poor candidates for support and pavement as well. If we look up over here at Coach Light and Old Stage, there's only 2 little crazy color patterns there. That's because there was no base whatsoever underneath those concrete pavements. And if you look at the number underneath it, it's 1. The worst soils in town underneath those 2 routes there. But they're some of the best pavements in town. And concrete pavements do a great job of bridging over really soft dirt, but it's impossible to build on. So what you've been doing by every few years going through, swapping out the bad panels, replacing them, and letting that pavement live in perpetuity, that's working. I recommend you do that for the rest of the time, because they're the best routes in the city. And this is a different variant of the same map. The color coding doesn't line up with the red, yellow, green like a stoplight. It happened to correspond with the highlighters in my hand when I was doing this. The orange colored routes reflect our asphalt pavements with thick base course underneath it and decent, suitable subgrade soils. The yellow are similarly asphalt pavements with a thick ag base, but not very good subgrade soils. And up here on Coach Light, we have our concrete pavement with horrible soils. Brooks Lane is the only other route in the city that turned out to have a higher PACER rating. But if we look at the ag base and soil grade, or the subgrade soil gradeness, they're the highest, or among the highest in the city there. It's when you're building roads, whatever's beneath what you see, that's what matters the most about how it performs. And this table here is just kind of a summary of all the routes in the city that we checked, what were the most recent ratings, the amount of samples that we collected, what is the base thickness, and what do the soils look like. And if you look at this, we've got normally 3, 4, 5 inches of asphalt in various states of distress, but not only a foot or more of aggregate base course, the road gravel underneath the asphalt, it's thick, it's at least a foot thick. You got lots of options to build on this, but we've got subgrade soils that are predominantly poor, poor to suitable, but with that thick stone layer above it, it's a good cap, it's a good platform to do road maintenance and build new stuff on.
Could you leave that last one up for just a second?
Yep. The table?
The table, yeah.
Is there a particular spot you wanted to look at?
Yes, I spoke to the crew on Sager Court when they took the core.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you only took one, and I heard you say something about every 1,000 feet or whatever the case may be. And you rated Sager Court as poor, and I'm just kind of curious. It was taken at the end of the court, the turnaround type of thing. And
I'm going to go up to the map.
It's off of Bristol.
South of Bristol.
it's off of
Down
Bristol,
there,
south
yep.
of 13 mile.
Yep.
Sager Court is a location, the early to mid-20s, those core numbers were me hunting around town trying to find bad dirt. 27 was a location we did at the end of Sager Court. 25 was a localized bad spot that I tried to find poor soils and couldn't. It was just a localized spot of bad pavement. And you can see 20 is a couple lots down right there as well with similar results to what I had at 25. So they were not necessarily both on Sager Court, but they were on Bristol Lane on either side of where the Sager Court intersection is, as well as Sager.
So your question, why was it taken at the end and not mid?
No, I spoke to the crew when they were out there that morning taking their core. It was done at the end of the court, the turnaround, which gets most traffic because whether it's semis or whatever the case may be.
The pavement condition was the worst there.
And it's where the drainage pipe goes
from the center to the swale, between the two lots at the end. And so that's why I was just curious, because Sager Court itself, in my opinion, the 40 years I've lived here, after the paving, it's in good shape. So I was surprised to see that you had a cooler there in terms of the number 3. And I just wondered if it had anything to do with the sample that they took.
So the Pazer rating was different than the coring that was done. So the Pazer rating was done by a certified crew that went out before any of this coring was done for just a visual.
They're different components.
I think what
They're
Bill's
different pieces of
saying is that the pavement and the base actually looks pretty good. And it's just maybe a visual thing, there's cracking at the surface, and that's just what they see. However, the stability of the pavement is still good, which again gives you a lot of options on how to rehabilitate the road, which is what we're searching for. The most cost-effective way to I won't say fix the road, but fix the surface of the road.
I'm not going to run my mouth too long about Pacer, but I can't help myself. There's not all cracks in the road are created equal. There's types of pavement distress and types of cracking that means different things. And the types of distress that are indicative of old worn-out pavements or soft yielding subsoils, those are the kinds of distress in the pavement that gets you to the lower pavement ratings or Pacer ratings, even if the route doesn't look like it's all that cracked up. But if the cracking is due to indicative of potholes or bad soil failure, or just the pavement's worn out and can't hold any, can't support loads any longer, those will put you down on the Pacer scale just by virtue of their presence. Done wasting time.
Yeah, no, it's not a perfect scale by any means. Like Bill said, he's like one Pacer rating of 3 doesn't necessarily equal the same in terms of another Pacer rating of 3. One may be yielding subsoils, which is a lot more expensive to fix than just old worn out pavement, but they might get the same exact rating. Okay, so that was all the fun stuff that Bill got to talk about. I get to talk about all the engineering asset management. Okay, so here we talked about how village management didn't feel that it had enough funds to improve the roads with just what you get from the state. So here's what you get from the state. State road revenue is called Act 51 funding. The village gets about $125,000 a year based on their total road length. Their average Pazer rating, based on what we saw, was 3.5. Part of the Pazer program calculates how much it would cost per year based on some factors that they have from the statewide database that they have for cost per lineal foot of roadway rehabilitation, that it's predicted to cost about $150,000 per year. Now, we haven't, I preface that by saying we have not done a roadway asset management plan for the Village of Bingham Farms. We did one for your neighboring community in Beverly Hills. So we kind of just did a little math here to give you, say, okay, well, if Beverly Hills has a 3.9 and it takes $1.25 million per year to maintain their $47 million, it'll probably take you $150,000 to maintain your 5.2 or 5.12. That's how we came up with that. If we did do a roadway asset management plan for the village, they would calculate an actual number based on the program that we would run through. So we feel we're pretty confident in that. So therefore, you can see that the village does not get enough money from the state per year to even maintain the rating that they have. So if you wanted to improve the rating that you have, the Pazer rating that you have, obviously more funds would be necessary to put into that account. And that's kind of why we're here. I think village management recognize that. They recognize that roadways are important for the village, for the residents, and for the just what Bingham Farms is. It's a very nice community. They should have nice roads. I think everyone would think that. Since I've been working in the village of Bingham Farms, I think we did a job in 2016 where we spent about $50,000 in patching a couple spots. And that's really it. So the road fund is fairly, I won't say fairly flush, but for the village, it is fairly flush because not much money has been spent on roadway improvements. My opinion, in part because we haven't had a plan for it, right? And I think that's what Ken had kind of realized is let's get a plan to figure out how we can spend this money because, best laid plans, right? We want to figure out how to best spend the village's money. So how do we spend the village's money on road improvements if you want to? Oops, wrong way. you can continue to do nothing, and the roads will continue to deteriorate. So we can maintain the existing rating. However, we know that Act 51 funding is insufficient. You could borrow a little bit from general fund to kind of pay for the gap and just kind of maintain where they're at with some very minor surface treatments, crack sealing, and things like that. Or we could improve the roadways. But the big question is, when we want to improve roadways, are what are the villages and the residents' expectations of the improvement? So that's kind of what we're kind of here to want to help you decide on. What do you feel your village resident expectations are, and how much do you want to put into your roadway network? So some potential funding sources are, obviously, you can borrow from general fund. You can put together a roadway millage, either for maintenance or for improvements or for both. This is kind of a save to spend type. You can do a millage for however much you want to, and you can use that to save up until you have enough money to do a big project. Or you can do a bond and put that onto a millage, which is more like your credit card, where you just borrow now and pay it back later. There's also special assessment districts, which most of your private roads would have, and there's other grants and principal forgiveness loans, which are really non-guaranteed. You can continue to, I think we've applied for a couple, Ken, and haven't been successful because the village doesn't really fall into the category of communities that get grant funding, unfortunately. So even when you do improvements to your roadways, they still need to be maintained. However, as you do roadway improvements, your maintenance costs become less. And I'll go back to this chart here, because I think this is a very good chart on how roads deteriorate. So if you can keep your roads up in this good category, they'll last a long time, and they cost a lot less to maintain. You can see how quickly they deteriorate once they get past that good stage. Remember, that good was like a 7 rating, about. This is about 7, this is about 3 to 4 in here. So you can see it really moves fast. Once you get outside that 7 condition range, that's when you start getting cracks in your pavement. You get water in your pavement. You get freeze-thaw, and they really just break up. So it's really, you want to catch them up in here, or you kind of almost want to wait for them to just fail and then totally reconstruct them. So you're in a position right now where you're right on the border here for most of your roads. You're at 3.5, where you probably need a little bit more of a I don't want to call it major surface rehabilitation, because I think you got good subsoils and good bases, but a more significant surface improvement might be necessary for some of your roads. So I want to go back to that. Does a good chart. One thing I want to mention, so this is another slide that I changed. I think Berkeley was pointing to Northville on your packet, so I just kind of slid everything down a little bit. But this is based on the 2021 Southeast Oakland County Equalization Comparison to Tax Rates. I am no expert on tax rates, millages. You have a treasurer here that I'm sure is very well informed on all of this. But from what I gathered, the Village of Bingham Farms tax rate is 9 mils currently. Very, very low on the chart in comparison to other communities within Southeast Oakland County. Based on fiscal year 21, it was my understanding that 1 mil is about will generate almost $200,000 worth of funds to pay for things. So 5.15 mils will get you $1 million to put towards road funds if you wanted to, as an example. And 5.15 would put you right in between Beverly Hills and Kego Harbor. So still on the lower end of the millage rates for communities in and around Southeast Michigan. So those, I think that was kind of what village management had thought might be a good idea, and a way to proceed was, okay, well, maybe we should present putting a millage out there to the community and see what they think about spending this amount of money on roads, since our millage rate is considerably low right now. Again, it's totally up to the voters to do that, but we felt that providing all this background and an actual plan on how we want to attack the rehabilitation there in a cost-effective manner might be a good public relations campaign on how to present it to the voters and encourage it if they support it. If they don't, again, that's totally up to them. But these are some of the things that we were talking about during our discussions on how to plan for your roadway network improvements. So again, it gets really back to level of service and expectations. What level of service do you want to provide your residents, and are they willing to pay for that level of service? And then what are your expectations for these road projects? You want to improve them, or you just want to maintain where you're at? And the costs obviously line up with that. So if you want to just maintain, you can spend $150,000, $200,000 a year and just kind of maintain where they're at, keep them looking in a condition where they're going to average 3.5 to 4 on the Pager scale, which is pretty much what you see right now. Or you could pay a little more and improve them, and then lower your maintenance costs per year as well at the end of the cycle. So I'll move to Bill now to talk about some of these reconstruction and maintenance options that we may have, and we have a couple samples up here that I'll try and display a little bit while he speaks.
Back to the phone.
Oh, you want to?
Yeah, I plan on talking about it.
Oh, okay, never mind then. I won't. I was gonna be Vanna White, but
Regardless of what options are selected for a particular route in the village, the industry calls it a mix of fixes. There's lots of different techniques, rehab and maintenance and reconstruction techniques that can be viable options depending on what your pavement conditions and base conditions and subgrade conditions are. Like I was saying before, not every Pacer 3 is the same because the different types of distress and badness that can get you to that 3. There's different rehab and maintenance options might be applicable to some situations and not others. Like in a situation where we have good base but relatively thick pavement, we might be able to mill off the top of the existing asphalt and then put a new surface on and maintain all the rest of the infrastructure you've already paid for and is in place. We can keep it that way. There's times when the pavement's relatively thin, but it also looks like it doesn't have a lot of soft soil or bad base problems. Maybe that can just get an overlay or a slurry seal or some combination of chip seals and slurry seals and fog seals. And there's all kinds of elaborate combinations of these different techniques. The Texas underseal, for example, is when you do the milling and then do the cape seal and then do the overlay on top of it. And there's all kinds of weird alchemy-based combinations of the different maintenance and rehab techniques that can be applicable to different routes in the city. And it doesn't mean, Brad was throwing around $12 million and $17 million gold-plated high-level cost estimates for everywhere in the village. Even with much smaller units of money, you can make localized targeted improvements to the routes in the city using. There's a lot more techniques than what we have here, but using the mix of fixes and choosing not doing the square peg in the round hole, but choosing the right fix for the right application is what we try to do if we're helping with that. And everyone loves pictures. So from our field investigation, we've got photos from each route showing the types of distress that are out there. Bingham Lane gets as much traffic as any route in the city, but you can see we've got large diameter cracks. You can see from 100 feet away, localized base failures. The crescent cracking is indicative of water getting into the roadway, softening the soil and failing when traffic goes over it. Bingham Road, similar condition. The pavement that I can see on the surface looks like it's been there for quite a while. You can tell by the color, the wearing of the surface, and evidence of past crack sealing. One thing I did see when I was looking around here is there was evidence of past crack sealing, and I could see evidence of old slurry seals or chip seals that had happened in the past, and some of that stuff is still out there. Bristol Lane, pretty similar in condition.
That's a good one.
Yeah, if you look at Brooks Lane, this got rated higher. We don't see nearly the large diameter cracks or localized badness that we saw on some of the other routes.
That's an official term too, localized badness.
Localized badness. I like greatness and badness.
Awesomeness.
Yeah.
Another one.
But if we look at Coach Light Lane, this is a concrete pavement, and the one I said had the worst soils in town underneath it. We can look, the panels are in decent shape, and there's some panels that have been maintained before, but they've got some life left in them. I think a program similar to what you've already been doing, which is every few years go through and
remove the worst of the worst and replace them, and just do that in perpetuity, and you can keep it like this. Yes?
Was Coach Lake always concrete?
Based on what I could see out there, it appeared to be.
And you're still seeing evidence of the chip seal, which was the original surface done when the roads were hard surfaced.
Is that like 1984-ish?
Yeah,
Yep,
it was. I remember.
they're good. I mean,
Yeah.
again, you have good bases, it's just old pavement.
Yeah.
All of those chip seals and slurry seal type surface treatments are kind of like paint on steroids to me. I mean, it's heavy duty paint. And if you have a good dry surface and you paint it properly, paint will stay there forever, or not forever, but for a long time. So with these slurry seals.
The reason that we decided to do the chip seal was because they like the look.
That's totally up to, that's part of that resident expectations.
It was
uh,
Oh, nobody needs
yeah,
to
so a
hear.
lot of people like the,
Thanks.
rural look of the
Yeah.
village, which is why
Yeah.
they wanted that, and that's one of the expectations. What's your expectation for the village roads? If it's, we like that look, we want to do that, we would make sure that chip seal is the right application for that road, or maybe we need to do a overlay and then a chip seal to make sure we get some structure back. The chip seal doesn't provide.
Yeah, the chip seal
too much
isn't,
structure.
it's not asphalt pavement. It doesn't add any structure to the road. It is a heavy duty, for lack of a better term, surface treatment.
Right.
So if you have a pavement that's in place, or even just one lift of pavement that's in place, you can maintain, if you've got a good base, you can maintain the surface for a long time by, repeated applications of surface treatment and, top level improvements. That puts you in the top of the curve that Brad was talking to, where, the less heavy duty improvements don't cost as much because the pavement's not as deteriorated. And if you can maintain your pavements that way, that's the utopia.
Does it provide any benefit from damage? You said there was a seal that was put on it. I mean, does that protect it at all, or no?
It does inhibit infiltration of surface water moisture and rain. I mean, it does. It's a seal.
For a while.
Yeah, it doesn't go forever.
Forever.
But
Did
it
you
helps.
quote the cost of chip seal?
We did not go through that yet. That's our next kind of step.
Got it.
Is to, now that we
Okay.
got all the pavement cores back, we'll
The cost.
take our full road reconstruction probably off, because we know we don't want to do that anymore, and we'll start looking at some less expensive options and different combinations, mixes of fixes, as Bill said, to kind of present on certain roads. And as long as you guys are comfortable with us putting that plan together and kind of presenting that.
The network
Whatever you
level,
want.
the network level cost estimates that were prepared before the field data was collected were all for heavy rehab or reconstruct kind of options, not the mix of some lighter duty treatments where they were applicable.
We have a question. I don't know if you want to take questions at the end, or...
We're kind of...
Now, this is looking at pictures and talking, so
Yeah.
we're here.
Kathy Hageman from Bingham Lane. Just from a historical perspective, one of the reasons we did not redo the chip seal was because there was maybe one or two companies that were doing it at the time. So you may be limited in your choice of companies if you go that way.
Exactly.
It's like that today, too.
Yeah. Yep, I think some come up from Ohio to do it, I know a lot, so.
That's
yeah,
correct.
Yep. And I can tell you, we reconstructed a concrete road like this in Beverly Hills, and I can tell you from experience, do not uncover the road. It was sloppy, it was bad, it was expensive. We did a lot of subgrade undercutting. We will not be doing that again in the village of Beverly Hills. So, as Bill said, keep along with your patching program. It was perfectly fine.
The only way
Not
this-
uncover that.
The only way this was buildable at the time of initial construction is the developer was able to run the construction traffic off the road and place the concrete from off the road onto all the toothpaste. But if you had to build it with houses there, you'd have to work off the toothpaste, and it would require digging to China and building back up with a bunch of expensive stuff.
And it's the same for your roads that have really thick aggregate bases and poor subsoils. Same thing. That really thick base bridges all the poor soils. So you don't want to get in there and clear everything out, because then you're just exposing all this stuff. Keep it capped.
That's where the
Keep it
mix
capped and build on it, or just take a little bit off and get a new surface.
That's where choosing elements from the mix of fixes that don't go deep, is how we would attack those kinds of areas. From Court, this is another street that I went hunting for for bad soils and couldn't find them. We had a sample collected in the middle of Farm Court, if I remember correctly, and at the end of that cul-de-sac, there is a spot that maybe had one or two asphalt trucks worth of the worst stuff in town, or was placed while it was raining, or something bad happened. So the pavement looked significantly worse there, where it got the least amount of traffic, and it just made no sense to me. So I went and got another sample there, and the dirt was even better than it was elsewhere on the route. So that was a case where it was found a bad load of asphalt or evidence of some bad construction. Hickory Hollow Lane, better condition. We got a thick centerline joint crack here that's deteriorating, but there's evidence you've been out here maintaining it. This is the crack sealing of relatively new pavements. That's the super efficient maintenance you do at the top of the curve. Like, that is the best bang for your buck pavement maintenance you could do or ever commission. Would be crack sealing of pavements in good condition.
And even if it's in within a year or two of when you put it down, and we say it all the time, we put a pavement down, and a year or two we go back and crack seal, and they're like, "Where are you going back? We just fixed that road. What are you going back for?" That's what you need to do. You need to keep, it's going to crack. Asphalt will crack. It'll crack at seams. Cut those seams out, seal them up so you don't get water into them. That's what makes your pavement last.
And some communities will build that first round of crack sealing into the contract for, a maintenance or resurfacing operation. They build the sealing of the cracks that come through after the first winter into the job. Old Stage Road, this is the other concrete route. When I was stumbling around here, I saw evidence of 4 different concrete patching rounds, just based on the type of concrete and type of distress. So you've been working the plan. As you can see, the whiter colored concrete's got a newer surface. The whiter color indicates that it's has an additive to the cement that they don't do anymore. These other panels, grayer color and are older, these are going to last for a long time, and just swap the bad ones out as they come. Timber Trail, I assume, is going to be a pathway?
No, maybe not. See,
What do you mean?
There's options on the table for converting it from a road to a pathway. It's going to be an expensive fix to fix Timber Trail. There's a lot of drainage issues on Timber Trail, so there'd be not a lot of work beyond just putting new pavement back to get that to a road that can be sustainable for a while.
What's the fix for that?
We're going to go through a drainage study here with the grant that we got through Oakland County to figure out exactly how that area drains, where it drains to, and what kind of drainage is there. That's going to be the big thing. So, it's going to, it's going to come up in front of everyone on the plan. What do you want to do with these roads?
Yeah, I back up to it. I walk it a lot.
So you could.
Yeah.
It was brought up some time ago that, hey, can we just convert it to a path? It turns out to be a very cost-effective solution if all the residents are okay with it being a path. That's the biggest question. So, we're talking about these mix of fixes. Now we're kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. Do we want to put, if you go back to the chart, it's probably too far back, but the chart, it was like $800,000 to do a serious fix on it versus $250,000 to convert it to a trail.
What does a trail look like? What are you talking?
It would be like a 10-foot wide pathway that you walk on. Just
Not hard surface, just dirt?
No, it'd be hard surface.
Okay.
Yeah. It'd be like a 10-foot wide.
Drivable?
No, we would not want to make it drivable, which is why it's more cost effective. You'd have less asphalt.
There's a lot of traffic on that path. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not my decision. We're just trying to aid you in making decisions.
And if the path we're going to, or if Timber Trail we're going to remain a roadway, there's different materials and there's different store-bought products that can be used to help build the roadway embankment up.
But if you don't fix the drainage, it's going to be a reoccurring problem.
But there's things that you can use.
Yeah.
There's expensive things that you can use to build a roadway out of that will work in their presence of poor drainage. I mean, as with all things, all it takes is money. But there's ways you can do that. That's part of the mix of fixtures. There's options on the table, even if the drainage isn't improved.
So it's a topic for discussion for sure. Part of this.
And we're not here making the choices of this is what's going to happen on this route and that on that route. We're here to help. There's lots of options, and we're here to help. I think that's kind of the undercurrent of every one of these slides. There's lots of options. We're here to help.
This is just a little picture of some of the enclosed drainage that we've kind of talked about using to help the drainage. It's an enclosed drainage system. It keeps your ditches, keeps your or it can replace your culverts into the driveways. Everyone knows about their culverts. They're only got, a couple inches, and they always heave up, so you got that bump that goes over the culvert. This will help get rid of all those, make it a little more aesthetically pleasing, but still keep the ditch and culvert type feel. You'll still have the smaller ditch in front, but it promotes infiltration, dries up a little quicker, and it helps the subgrade drain as well, because that pipe is deeper in the ground and encased in gravel.
But again, now we're going into the different, more
drainage.
Expensive options of construction kind of stuff.
I appear to have water running under my grass in the ditch. My neighbor came out with like a broom handle and started putting it down, and it went right through and the water came up.
Saturated soils, and something like this would help that. Would help drain that, because there's a lot of clay around here.
Interesting. Good to know.
And I think that's all we have prepared. But if anybody likes to talk about more of these pictures or look at these crazy charts and graphs, I'd love to.
Everybody turn your microphone back on.
I have a couple of questions. This is fascinating and quite different from what I thought you were going to say today, and quite different, actually in a good way, I think. So I'm pleased, but my understanding was if the road was at 3, it would likely, 2 years from now, it would be a 2 or a 1. Are you telling us that with maintenance, it can stay at 3?
You can do that. When you get down to the bottom of that curve, it becomes more and more expensive to maintain as it's deteriorating faster. But just because you're at a 3 today doesn't mean a month from now you're going to be in a 2, and then 6 weeks later you'll be in a 1. Every situation is different. It's with respect to, like I've been saying over and over again, what's beneath the road and the traffic that is applied to the road. That's going to dictate more than anything else just how flat or steep those deterioration curves are. So just because you're at a 3 doesn't mean you have 2 years left before it's
and
impassable.
You see that curve at the bottom really flattens out. Yeah. So it takes some time to go from a 3 to a 2 to a 1. It takes some time. To go from a 7 to a 4, it's really steep. It goes a lot quicker.
Okay, and you indicated that you thought we were getting $125,000 a year from Act
51.
That was my understanding. Yes.
Is that? Can we verify that? I mean,
yeah, we can.
Does it go to the road accounts, or is it going into our general fund?
Yeah, it goes into the road accounts, and I can look at that. Right now, just out of, if you're up here, listen. Right now, if you're just curious, we split between major and local roads, right. And currently in the fund, both road Act 51 and what we have in the general funds, about 1.4 million is what we have.
Okay.
So as I said, you're pretty flush as compared to what you only get 125 a year. You're at 1.4. You haven't been spending too much out of your road fund. So
right. Well, we've also been putting aside for many years, I think, $150,000 a year from general funds into road funds.
So you've been saving up.
Right.
Yeah. So real quickly, out of Oakland County pool, there's about 604. We have 2 CDs, one with Fifth Third Bank and one with Superior National Bank at 250 each. And then whatever is left in Huntington. Huntington is 301 in that fund, so that's worth the 1.406.
So the next step you're indicating would be to complete this draining analysis, the drain analysis, which we're doing with the grant. Is that correct?
That's going to be taking place this summer. We'll get some nice spring rains. Andrew will be helping with that a lot. We'll go walk the roads or drive the roads during these rain events, see where we have drainage issues, see how things drain. We have topographic maps that kind of show how things drain, where we need outlets, where we don't have outlets currently. It's tough in a village that has a lot of clay soils to promote drainage. There's not a lot of infiltration going on. Everything stays at the surface, so we need to find outlets. Luckily, you have a river that runs mostly through your village, but you also have roads that kind of, dam that up. So do we need to put culverts in to allow it through? And we want to make sure we're selective and not just putting cross culverts in everywhere. Because you put cross culverts in, that's where you get some dips, so we can get deterioration, things like that. So you want to be selective, be strategic on where you put these outlets, how you drain everything, and we can mold that into any road improvement program as well.
So then you're suggesting we do that before you give us a recommendation as to how we should proceed? Is that what you're
I
telling
think they'll
me?
be concurrently. Yeah, I think we'll be kind of working concurrently. There's a lot of these mixes of fixes that Bill talks about that don't really, the drainage will just elevate that fix even more. Like, we don't think you need to you may not need to put under drain along the entire length of the road like we had kind of estimated, because we didn't know what was under there. And you can still do a slurry seal or a microsurface on top just to get that pavement up. The drainage improvement in that area will just help that last longer. So they'll be kind of done concurrently. And yeah, we're talking next 2024 election would be.
If there was a millage.
If there was a millage, if you wanted to go through with a millage, that would be the time. We have a year and a half. The drainage study would be done before our kind of final recommendations would be done. So I guess yes, we will have the drainage stuff done before the roadway recommendations.
It will help guide and it will improve the road recommendations.
Good.
Yes. When you were going through the road-by-road cost analysis with the $17 million full road construction estimate and the full surface rehab at 12 mil, and then the comment was made, we can get it done maybe for that, just maybe it was a brief comment that was made, but I noted that.
Yeah, so we may think we can get less than that, I think was my comment. Those were major surface rehabilitations before we did the pavement coring to find out what good subsoils and ag base that you already have underneath your roads. We feel that that's definitely, that 12 million is an upper limit.
Okay.
For example, I would assume that those cost estimates had a complete reconstruction on Coach Light and Old Stage, and I think there's no scenario where we would recommend that be the course of action. Now, that's where the field investigation allowed us to clarify that cost estimate.
So important, yeah.
So if, in fact, we're at 3.5 as a village, and that is the tipping point for that curve to really start escalating on this drawing, and yet that's just the rehab at 12 million, and here's the rehab part right here. We're about here.
Mm-hmm.
So that curve can happen pretty quickly. So I'm a little concerned about, are we going to just do a patch and let time, as we're doing this, we've got a millage and everything else to happen, so by the time we can really get to it, will we have already progressed to a different point than we're sitting here today?
Based on where the pavements are in the deterioration curve and how pavements that you have here typically deteriorate, no, you're not looking at a situation where 2 years from now, all these observations are obsolete and analyses are obsolete. That's not going to be the case.
Yeah. As Bill said, not all threes are the same. If it was a 3 that had poor subsoils and was going to catastrophically fail, then yeah, you might go down to a 1 pretty quickly. But I think most of the 3s and 4s that we saw were because of just old pavement.
My favorite thing to put roads on is old dirt roads because it is such a good base. The problem is it's the worst draining stuff possible. That's the big negative. But it is the best thing to pave on from a good solid surface point of view, and lots of surface lower cost based options are on the table in that situation.
And you put a lot of investment into your roads already, so we want to utilize that. We don't want to be taking stuff off that you've already paid for.
Yeah.
Right. The only preface I have on that is when you start adding, you got driveways. Everyone's very particular about their driveway and how their driveway hits the road. So if you start adding height, which is fine to do, especially on a ditch and culvert type system, you don't have curbs to worry about. You get to the driveway issues. That's really the biggest kind of issue you get when you start just adding on to roads.
When relatively small changes in the final road height can manifest themselves with very expensive driveway costs.
A lot of brick paper driveways, concrete driveways, and things that would need to be taken out and replaced if they're not happy with the final product, essentially. That's why we'd like to see asphalt driveways all in the right of way for everything, so that we can go and we can add on, and then we can add on and kind of slope down to the existing driveway on private property. So in a lot of communities, they have what's called a driveway permit, which almost says if you want to do something different than what is contiguous with the road, you need to get a permit and you need to sign an indemnification saying that if we ever redo the road, that we're going to put your driveway back in asphalt, and if you want something different, you're responsible for the difference in cost. So that we get, again, it gives the village more flexibility to do improvements at more cost-effective rates. If you could just overlay, that's really one of the cheapest options. You're just putting a whole new layer of asphalt on. You don't got to do any removal or anything like that, but we don't do that a lot because it raises the road, which affects all the driveways.
It sure does. That's a problem I have. I put in French drains on either side, carrying it back to the road, to the ditch, but it's an expensive fix.
Yes, they are, but they're
So
effective.
there's different ways we get around it. We can do like what's called like a profile milling, where we only mill off kind of the edges, and then build up the road. It increases the crown in the middle. If there's a pretty flat road already, we can get away with that, and therefore we're taking off less. It costs less to remove the material. You're saving more of the material that's already there, which again is kind of the goal of what we want to continue that investment you've already put into your roads. So there's different things we can do. Again, this mix of fixes that Bill keeps talking about, we just need to kind of go through them.
I talk about mix and fixes, Brad talks about high cost.
We like your...
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I always like Bill better.
I just had three questions, Bill. Brad, you could answer as well, add color. The major surface rehabilitation is about 15 years? Is that typically?
Based on what we're seeing on Bingham Lane Bingham Road and Bristol Lane, those had major surface rehabilitations done in 2004, 2006. So that's about
That's a reasonable
16, 17 years. We've done patching on both those roads already, so they are kind of getting towards the end of, in that 3 or 4 areas. So that's kind of what we figured you could get. Again, it's different. You could go, a couple cities over and they could get 25 years out of a major surface rehab. It just, it depends on everything.
It depends on when you call it done, too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. The other question is, and I'm not an engineer, that's why I'm asking, the full road reconstruction based on the latest materials that are used today. You had said that there was an additive that was put that is no longer used. What's the typical longevity of a full road restoration estimate based upon materials that are the latest and greatest?
The ASHTO, the federal pavement design methodology, is set up for a 20-year pavement design life. And you can design for longer, but the standard pavement, reconstructive pavement design life is 20 years.
It has a ton of factors, like drainage and truck traffic and things like that. Whoa. Careful.
I almost did that.
Are you gonna get this out?
Yeah, I forgot to talk about that. We're talking about mix and fixes. Like everyone has seen asphalt, and you see it every day, and all it's the same from the top. But all of these core samples are of different asphalt mixes, and they all look different. While this layer is much thicker than it would be in real life, this is the material that's on the surface course of the interstate. If you look, there's many little pieces of crushed up rocks in here. It's a relatively small amount of asphalt cement sticking it all together. But this is set up for, doesn't have a super smooth looking surface, doesn't have pedestrian traffic, but can handle tons and tons of truck traffic. So what this would look to the layperson, just like everything else in my hand from the surface. The other end of the spectrum, this is what a slurry seal looks like. You can see there's essentially 0 rocks in here. There's just a little bit of sand and a bunch of binder to stick it all together. So your question of, does this give structure, or what does the slurry seal do to us? It helps the surface, and it has there's a little bit of mass other than liquid in here, but it's a far cry from this right here.
And the slurry seal wouldn't be that thick.
No,
either.
this wouldn't be that thick. This would only be a couple inches thick in real life. This is what the surface layer of the interstate is. And this would just be, whatever, a 1/4 inch thick in real life on the slurry seal, but it's completely different.
So
How does
we
that
kinda
hold up?
created that sample.
How does that hold up to salt plowing?
When you say that, you're talking about
Yes.
it's all of those things help beat it up. I mean, but there's a reason that relatively low volume roads are maintained with these all over town all the time, because if they're applied appropriately, they do provide some resistance from salt and plowing and everything else, but if you find me the asphalt that's gonna survive getting abused by plows, let me buy in on the front end of that. And on really thick routes, oftentimes these three materials together will get stacked up. This is one mix, this is a different mix, this is a different mix. You can see we've got bigger and increasingly, or less big, rock pieces in here, and there's more asphalt cement and more sand in the layers that go towards the top. Less asphalt cement, more rocks in the bottom. But as part of mix of fixes, reconstruct the full, the $17 million option. We'll have a pavement with multiple layers in, with the base course and leveling course and these top courses. And some of our overlay type solutions are going to have these fine texture mixes. Like this is an example of what the top course asphalt looks like now. Like lots of small rocks that are all crushed up compared to this blend or that blend there. But it's all part of new materials, new technology, how the way things are done now. But even just looking at asphalt products, even just looking at asphalt products, there's a mix of fixes in this box as far as different materials made in different ways, placed in different ways for different applications. So once we start adding in different crack fillers and other different types of cape seals and fog seals and this and that, we can mix a lot of things together to make the right choices for different routes. And I encourage everyone to come look at these and stare at them forever after this meeting.
Well, you've given us a ton of information, and I appreciate that. Thank you also for,
Couple more questions.
Another question.
oh, okay.
So what you guys have gone through tonight, you've given us, as you said, a ton of information. So now is it up to us, up to you, up to both of us then to decide what do we do next? What monies do we spend in a timeline? Is that the next progression of what we're going for?
That is the next progression. It's up to you to give us where you want to go with this. We gave you a ton of information. What we would do next is probably take all that pavement core information and dial it into each road and give you what we would think, maybe an option A and option B with a estimated cost for each road. That's going to take a lot of time. We're dialing into each road. We're like going a lot deeper. So we can give you a proposal for what that cost would be, and you can mull it over. Or if you want to go a different direction and say, you know what, we're good with maintenance, you gave us a lot to think about, and we think we're good status quo, we're just going to keep maintaining it. That's why we presented here, to give you all these options and tell us what you'd like to do.
So you come back then with options for each road. Here's what we would suggest, here's what timeline it would be, or here's some other options. Okay.
Yes. I would like to wait till we do the drainage study as well, so we know any fixes in, there as well. But yeah, that's why we're trying to get ahead of this as well.
Right.
We want to get, because we think a very, very important aspect of presenting a plan to the public and getting their support is showing them all that, bringing something to the table and say, hey, look at all the investment we made into preparing a plan to show you, what are your questions? What are your concerns?
Right.
I would assume any resident that has, some hesitation about signing up to spend a bunch of money for this would start asking, did you look at this? Did you think about this? Did you check this? And we're trying to hit all those boxes and say, we looked at this, with the drainage, and we put all the answers together and came up with, we think this here and that there and that there.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to go.
Okay.
Would you be able to give us a priority and say, within the next 3 years, these two roads, even if you don't do anything else?
Of course, yeah. And typically what you want to do when you're developing a whole program is you want to start at the cul-de-sacs and kind of work your way back. So you want to do the cul-de-sacs and the roads that don't or that are off the main roads, because you're going to have a lot of truck traffic going in there. So you want to make sure those are the last ones that you do. So you'd start off with the cul-de-sacs on Bristol Lane, and you start out, you do Bingham Lane and all the other ones that are off of Bingham Road and Bristol Lane, and then do Bingham Road and Bristol Lane, kind of work your way out, essentially. So that would be part of the priority.
It's as important a part of designing one of those programs as anything. I was involved in a project last year that didn't put a whole lot of thought into where the truck traffic was going to go. And as a result, one of the routes that has to get fixed this year is one that was destroyed during the construction last year. So, lessons. It's an important part of planning on these programs.
Yep.
Do you have an idea as to which construction companies to actually use? This is down the road, obviously, but we've decided we're going to do some work on the roads. Can you help us with which companies are the best companies to use to do the actual work?
Yes, we have a lot of experience with different asphalt companies. We would presume that it would go out to competitive bid where you get the best price. Then at that point, we would just have to make sure that we vet whoever was the lowest, and we could put in any qualifications. They must have done so many square yards of pavement, things like that, or they must be MDOT pre-qualified, things of that nature to ensure we have a qualified contractor. Getting to any level of an invitation to bid, that just it muddies the waters a little bit. That's why we like to keep it nice and competitive, and it gets you the best price as well.
So you then would act as a project manager?
We could, if that's what you want us to do.
Okay.
And we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of construction inspectors. We have a lot of project management experience. The roads both big and small. Small are different. We have a lot of experience with big roads, but local roads and our inspectors dealing with residents that are directly affected every day by the construction. It takes we know which inspectors to put on which jobs that are good people person that can go knock on doors and say, hey, we're going to be in front of your driveway here in 20 minutes. You need to get your car out or things like that. So
there's complexities involved in the local road projects that don't exist on the higher volume routes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't really detour a person from getting into their driveway.
Good connect on the back.
Okay?
Excellent, thank
So
you.
I'm thinking that we'll all have questions that'll come up tonight as we're trying to sleep. So maybe those could be directed to Ken. If you could sort of gather up some questions, and once we have enough, sort of get back with you guys and we'll disperse those answers and just sort of try to keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And
of course, yep.
okay.
And we have other things going on in the village, and we'll keep communications with Ken too. So.
Right. Okay. Well,
Right.
thank you so much,
You're
and
very
thank you
welcome.
again for being ready to switch from last Wednesday. when we
I
had
don't know if I wanted to come out last Wednesday night.
Right.
I don't think anybody did.
I know. I kept calling Ken. I'm like, Ken, are you sure? Are you sure we're doing this? He's like, I don't know. I can't get a hold of Lisa.
Well, I wanted to wait until something actually started falling from the sky.
Gotcha. It all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
I'm going to let you proceed. Ken, do we need to go out that way?
Yes.
That was interesting.
Very.
I like that.
We'll be talking soon. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Andrew is here to learn.
Nope. No, I got it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bill.
We're moving on to new business. We are going to have an executive session to discuss the attorney's opinion, and I need a motion to go into executive session.
I would move that we go into executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, yeah, it's a roll call. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's roll call vote.
Sorry, didn't realize that.
For executive session.
Roll call vote.
Hageman.
Aye.
Hedge.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Howard.
Yes.
Mushigian.
Yes.
Blackburn.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
We're going to take a minute to let the room clear out, If anybody needs a bathroom break, now would be the time. Okay, thank you all for your patience with us. We are going to move on to the appointment to Fire Commission, which I would like to appoint Debbie Hedge to that. We've talked about it, you've been to a meeting, and appreciate your presence there.
You're welcome.
So we need a motion to appoint.
I would move to appoint trustee Debbie Hedge to the Franklin Bingham Farms Fire Department Fire Commission for a term to expire in November 2024.
And I would second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Or condolences.
Yes. Sounds pretty interesting.
A good group of guys.
Yeah, it's a good group. The next item is appointment to Planning Commission. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, Earl Wolf, our longtime planning commissioner, was up for reappointment, and he has graciously stepped down, not seeking reappointment. So I have congratulated Earl Wolf for many years on the Planning Commission, and Lisa has talked with Carl Grenadier as a potential replacement.
Carl, for those of you that don't know, does have experience on Planning Commission, Village Council, and DRB. So he's been involved before, and I feel confident. I'd like to appoint Carl Grenadier to the Planning Commission.
I'll make a motion to appoint Carl Grenadier to the Village Planning Commission.
I'd second.
Just for reference, I do have a sample motion typed out that has the term on there.
Should we include the term?
I would suggest that. It's on the find it, in the packet.
What page?
And it is at the bottom of the page of the memo that says Planning Commission appointment.
Okay, I will adjust the motion.
I do have that.
Okay.
What he said.
Yeah.
Planning Commission appointment.
Do you want to, here, too. Why don't you do it?
Oh,
Oh, there, okay, I don't have that.
Can you read that far?
Yes,
I can't.
I move to appoint
planning?
Carl Grenadier to the Village of Bingham Farms Planning Commission for a 3-year term to expire in February 2026.
there.
Second.
Just got this business license.
Any discussion?
Should keep that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is our lawn and landscaping maintenance contract renewal.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Johnson Landscaping has been our grounds maintenance vendor for many years. They have presented their contract to us for proposed services. The only change from last year to this year is the change in mowing fees. It has gone from $140 to $150. I would imagine that has to do with the price of gas more than anything else. All the other fees are the same. If you look at the green paper, all of the, and I'm going to talk to Johnson about his next contract, simply for writing it out is in a little more precise manner. The only ongoing cost on a weekly basis would be the mowing, the $150. Everything else on this page is a one-time cost. The $350, the $680, the $1,150 for fertilizing, that's all a one-time cost. The only ongoing is the $150.
Is that 350 or 3,000?
It's $3,500.
Okay.
And that might reference exactly what Tony was thanking us for earlier today when he talked about our tree trimming.
And so, and where is it that they, what is it that they do? I mean, is it the medians on the road, or where do they?
Are you referring to the trees?
I'm referring to any of this.
Oh, yeah, it is the right of way on either side of the roads, of all the public roads. Not 13 and not 14, but the public roads
So all
that we own.
the shrubs that get, or
Shrubs,
the
grass, tree branches, all of that kind of thing.
trimmed off the road.
Where's the lawn located? Like, we're at, go to Bingham Lane, it's 14 Mile, you turn on 4, that's not included because...
The lawn, what is the lawn look?
Yeah,
What is the question?
Yeah, I mean, does it include the lawn at 14 and Bingham Lane?
It would include Bingham Lane, but not 14. 14 is done by the county.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
so it's,
okay.
yeah.
But I mean, that corner, it comes in. Okay,
Yeah, and if
that's
there are,
included.
incidentally, if there are intersection issues with branches or trees or shrubs growing and kind of impeding people's view, that's something that John said would cut back. It just,
Okay.
they do it if they see it, and they do it if we request it.
Got it. Good.
Do we have any other people who might be interested in doing this?
We could put it out for bid. I haven't done that yet in the years that I've been here, which is really only 4. But we have not put them out for bid.
And he stayed the same all 4 years?
I don't know about that.
Oh.
I can tell you that last year and this year, the only change is the $100. I mean, the $10 in the mowing.
Right.
I just, this is my fault more than yours, but because the last time when we did the renewal of the waste
Garbage?
garbage contract, I didn't say anything, and I probably should have, but I'm really uncomfortable with just renewing these contracts without knowing whether there's somebody out there who could do it cheaper and as efficiently. I suspect that with this contract, we would probably get a bid from somebody else, and we would probably go back to these people anyway, but I don't like us getting in the habit of just renewing with whoever we had without making sure that there isn't somebody who could better serve the village.
Better served meaning cheaper.
Well, cheaper being one aspect of it, but
Okay.
also, I mean, you'd have to have some confidence that they were gonna be as good. Like, one time early on when I was on the council, when we were doing the trash or rubbish the time before, we actually had a lower bid, but for a lot of reasons, we took the higher bid. But I'm not sure that by doing it this way, we aren't, as a council, sort of like abdicating some of our responsibility to make sure that every tax dollar that the village sends us isn't best spent. And so, I mean, this doesn't seem like a major contract. The trash contract, I think, was more important. And I guess I'm raising this just because I don't think we should be doing it this way in future contracts. I think we ought to be, when they come up for renewal, I think we ought to be checking to make sure that we have the best possible outcome for the village. And I guess I should have spoken up earlier because maybe nobody else has the same concern I do.
You did speak up. Remember, you
Oh, did I?
meant you
Yes, you
did.
did,
And I'm sitting going, it's a great idea, and then we voted no. But because they gave us an extension at
It
the
was on
same
the-
price, remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but you did bring that, and I think you're right. I think you become complacent. And part of our job is to make sure that we're getting the best price for the value of the service that's being provided. And a couple of things, it's calling other municipalities to see who they're using. And then also with the bid, would be required to have some kind of endorsement from their current customer list. I think that would be appropriate, because you want to make sure that the service is reliable.
Well, this contract is a year. We can always, we can revisit it in a year, and the same guy also, or the same company also handles our streets for plowing and salting. And that contract will be will be before you all in the fall, and we can revisit that at that time as well.
Okay, we've had no complaints about their service, I trust.
Well, I have had a couple over the course of a couple of years, but I wouldn't say that it's overwhelming by any means. A couple of complaints about not enough salt or too much salt or plowing patterns, that kind of thing, but nothing that I don't think can't be addressed.
So do we want to go ahead? This is before us tonight.
Yeah, I think just go ahead with what we've got for this year. As I said, it's a yearly contract. The only problem with going out to bid, then we have to explicitly state what we want to happen.
Yeah, well, I could put that bid together, like, that's not an issue. Whether or not we get a response is another question, but we can certainly put a bid together for next year.
Yeah. And then also do the same thing for plowing and salting.
I understand that happened one time, and it didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Would someone like to speak about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember that.
That was only salting and plowing, not landscaping, I think.
Correct.
Okay,
That was enough.
all right.
So moving forward, we would like
Joe
to
has
see
a
the
question.
contracts.
There's a question.
Yes, Joe?
Question, in terms of this last Saturday, the 1-inch dusting that we had, how was Johnson Landscaping contacted, or by who, with regards to plowing and salting?
The police department maintained
They talked to Chief Roberts, they didn't do it.
well, that's how it's supposed to go. I'm not going to be driving out there measuring snow, Joe.
No, I'm not saying you should.
I know that, but that's what I would rely on is when the officers determine that, or perhaps Johnson does on his own, or maybe he works with them. That's been my understanding, is how it's worked in the past, is that Johnson consults with the department.
That's not how Chief Roberts indicated in terms of this last Saturday. I was out using a leaf blower clearing my driveway and my sidewalks, and the truck came down and plowed, like I say, inch and a half. And before, it was always a 2-inch limit. And so I just wondered, the village is going to experience a cost as a result of what was done, and I wondered who authorized it.
Well, before us today is the lawn and landscaping maintenance contract. I guess, Joe, you and I can talk about the salting and snow plowing contract at another time, because I will have to look into this.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, I'm starting that. So, yes, I need a motion to approve.
I move that we continue the contract with Johnson Landscaping for another year.
And I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Next, we have the treasurer's report. Again, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
Welcome to the first meeting. And
Oh, we nailed you on the first one, didn't we?
Well, I'll go through it. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I'm very excited and honored to be the treasurer, and everyone's been warm welcome, both the staff and just from the folks, both Chief Roberts and people that I've spoken to. So today is day 5, and everything's hunky-dory and going great, so we'll just continue to do that. What I did is, I did spend, just for a little bit of background, I did spend time with Greg, the former treasurer, the interim treasurer, sat down and went through a lot of things. The treasurer's report, he helped me kind of show the template of what you guys have seen in the past, so we're going to continue through it. One page might be out of order regarding the profit and loss budget, but let's just go through as they're numbered in the report. The check disbursement report for February of 2023, which I pulled on the 23rd of the month. Our general fund for the checks totaled $136,434.51. The check disbursement, there was one for the gas and weight category, and that was $6,400. Moving on to the profit and loss budget versus actual. What I did is I went back, we are now 7 months, so we're 58.33% through the fiscal year that we have. It starts in July. And looking at where we're at expense-wise, we're tracking exactly where we should be. I did look at linearity. I'm going to take a look at whether or not there's any cycles of up and downs, if it's front end or back end loaded. But we're at 56.6%, and we're tracking, like I said, right along. If we look back, I went back and I did look for July through January of 2022 when we were at 55.7. So we're basically right on track. Everything is just going as it normally did year to year. We're only 0.9% higher, that's just nominal. The last component of the treasurer's report is our investments as of January of 2023. They basically have stayed the same. We have it broken down, the general fund and the road fund. The only difference that I just wanted to call out to everyone is we did have a CD under the general fund that just renewed. The maturity date came up. That was at Independent Bank. We've now renewed it, and I renewed it for 90 days based upon, we want to keep everything short-term for a couple of reasons. One, if we need the access to the money. Two, there's been fluctuations in interest rates. The good news is that the new rate, based on that CD, is 4%, and prior to that, it was 0.71. So we've had an increase of 3.29% increase on that CD, which is great news. They just kind of keep ticking up. I guess it's good whether or not, or it's good or bad. If you're borrowing money, it could be bad. But in this case, when we're making investments, it's good to have the additional interest accrued to us. So other than that, again, I really look forward to working with everybody. My background, real quickly, is 40-some years, major Fortune 100 companies, always spent a lot of time in the private sector. With the exception of the last 5 years, I was with Cisco Systems, and what I did is I supported all public entities. So I had K through 12 universities, both public and private, and then a lot of municipalities from here all the way out to Arizona. I had a large territory. But that gave me kind of a flavor for public service and learning all about it, because I knew the private sector but not the public sector. And this is just, I love to learn new things. So again, thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good presentation.
Is that how I address you?
Lisa's fine.
Duly noted.
So I need a motion to accept the financial statements for January 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I also need a motion to approve the bills for February 2023.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Debbie for trustee comments.
I have no comments, but thank you for letting me be a part of this organization and council. And I had a tour of the firehouse when I went the other night and got to meet everybody, and it's going to be very interesting. So, thank you.
Welcome, Debbie. We're glad to have you join us. I know it's very difficult with timings, and Ken and I were just talking about it, but is there a list that is being developed for study session topics for this year?
No.
Not yet? Okay.
I mean, it's more,
What comes
things
up?
come up, yeah. So it's not like we have a whole year's worth of, this is what we want to do. I have some things that I want to do that I'm going to wait until you get back.
Okay.
Things that can wait. But if something comes up that we feel is more appropriate for a study session, then Yeah, we
Well,
kind
with
of look at the agenda.
progress, I'm anxious to see the timetable from the engineering firm for the roads as to when they will put together the various aspects they talked about, so.
Right.
Those will be critical.
Right,
Okay.
right. That would be a good topic for a study session.
Thank you.
I just want to welcome Bill and Debbie. Welcome, guys. We're great to have you on. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Also, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Welcome. And you're, I think, very strong assets for the team. So, yeah. Good.
I just wanted to do a brief update for, I guess there's only one remaining member of the old board, but during the last session, we had someone who wanted to open a AAA office in one of the outbuildings along Telegraph Road, and we had to turn down the initial application because of the way it was zoned. It wasn't zoned appropriately to put that in. So then we went through the process of changing the zoning so that it would be allowed. And I just wanted to say that after months and months, they are open for business. And I just went in and got a quote, and it's much better than the rates that I have for my private. Just in terms of like, if you wanted to support a local business, that AAA office is now open.
Always a good idea.
Just for anybody's information.
That's good.
I have nothing. No comments. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.